You were never his real father. Stop pretending. That's the sentence that ended a decade of my life. Not with shouting, not with a slammed door, just those 8 words, cold, clean, and delivered over the sound of a dripping kitchen faucet. Funny thing is, people imagine marriages end in explosions, but mine ended in clarity. A clarity so sharp, it sliced through every excuse I'd ever made for her, for him, and for the version of family I had been killing myself to hold together. My name is Ethan Ward, and this is the story of how one sentence didn't break me. It freed me.
I used to believe families were built the way houses were. Slowly, carefully, piece by piece, until one day you stood back and realized you'd made something solid, something worth protecting. Life taught me otherwise. My story starts long before the sentence that gutted me. It starts 10 years earlier when I married Clara Jennings and stepped into the role of stepfather to her son, Miles, a boy who barely spoke above a whisper and walked like he was apologizing for taking up space. He reminded me of myself at his age. Maybe that's why I tried so hard. I never pushed him to call me dad. I never tried to erase the man who left before Miles's first birthday. All I did was show up, every day, every event, every midnight fever, every failed math test. "Can you help me?" whispered from the hallway. But consistency is invisible to the people who benefit from it. They only notice when you stop. The night everything shifted, it was a Sunday. The kind of quiet evening where the world feels soft around the edges. I was fixing the loose handle on the kitchen drawer again. The 3rd time that month, Clara was pacing behind me, arms folded, voice sharp the way it gets when she's heading toward an argument she thinks she'll win. "Ethan," she said, "the guys from Miles's basketball team are going on a beach weekend. They all get to stay overnight. He wants to go." I kept tightening the screw. "Who's supervising?" "It doesn't matter," she snapped. "Stop being dramatic." I wiped the metal shavings from my fingers. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being responsible." She let out the kind of laugh that isn't really a laugh, more like a small weapon. "You treat him like he's 10, he's 16. And I treat him like I care what happens to him." Her face twisted, frustration curdling into something darker. She wanted a fight. I didn't give her one. That's when she said the sentence that split me open. "You're not his real dad. Stop pretending." I didn't respond, didn't raise my voice, didn't even stand up. People imagine heartbreak feels like fire. Mine felt like ice. Quiet, numbing, absolute. She waited for me to explode so she could feel justified. But when I stayed silent, she scoffed and walked away. Her footsteps echoing down the hallway felt like the final nails being hammered into a coffin I hadn't realized I was lying in. I stayed in the kitchen long after she left, staring at the drawer, the screw, the tiny, stupid tasks I kept fixing to hold a house together no one else respected. The next morning proved that staying silent wasn't weakness. It was prophecy. I heard voices drifting from the living room, Clara's, Miles, and Clara's mother, Elaine, whose presence was always a forecast for trouble. Their laughter had a jagged sound to it, like it wasn't meant for daylight. "She finally put him in his place," Elaine said. Clara laughed. "He acts like he's the only adult in this house." Then came the one that landed hardest. "He's not even my dad," Miles said. "He just pays for things and thinks that gives him power." I stood frozen in the hallway. It wasn't surprise that hit me, it was confirmation of everything I had refused to admit to myself. I walked back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. 10 years of effort, 10 years of paying bills, supporting dreams, building stability, swallowing insults, fixing everything that broke, including them. And yet, in their eyes, I wasn't family. I was utility, a wallet with a pulse. Funny how the truth can feel like freedom when you stop fighting it. By the time I stood up, the emotional part of me had gone quiet. The practical part had taken over. I made a mental checklist. Call Isabel Hahn, the lawyer who handled my prenup. Call Mark Rivera, the realtor who'd helped me buy the townhouse years before we got married. Move my paychecks. Leave the joint account funded for 1 month only. Pack light, leave clean, leave silently. Not out of pettiness, out of clarity. When love dies, dignity is the last thing you should protect. Upstairs, I pulled out 2 suitcases. I packed clothes, toiletries, and 3 framed photos of my parents. Everything else stayed behind: the furniture, the gifts, the memories, the tools, the things I built with my hands. They suddenly felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Before I left, I wrote a note, 10 words, block letters, steady hand. You're right, I'm not his real father, and you're not my real family. I placed it on the kitchen counter, the same counter where I'd cooked breakfast every Sunday, where I'd signed permission slips, where I'd wrapped birthday gifts. Then I grabbed my bags, walked outside, and locked the door behind me. Each step toward my truck felt lighter than the last. I drove to my friend Cole Archer's house. He opened the door, took one look at me, and said nothing. Just stepped aside and tapped the guest room door. Stay, he said, as long as you need. That night, lying on a mattress that wasn't mine, I realized something strange. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was free. For the first time in a decade. Leaving a life is strangely easy when that life has already left you. All the hard parts, anger, grief, denial, had been used up years earlier. What was left was a kind of stillness, the kind a man feels when he finally stops swimming against a current that was never going to let him through. The morning after I left, I woke in the guest room at Cole's place. Sunlight filtered through blinds that didn't quite close, casting thin stripes across the carpet. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then the memory returned, not as pain, but as fact. I checked my phone, 8 missed calls from Clara, 3 from Miles, 2 from an unknown number I assumed was Elaine. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I dialed Isabel Hahn, my lawyer. Ethan, she answered, her tone brisk but kind. I assume this isn't a social call. No, I said. I need to move forward with everything we discussed years ago. The prenup, the property separation, the townhouse. There was a brief pause. She wasn't surprised, just disappointed on my behalf. I'll start the paperwork, she said. Ethan, are you all right? I considered the question, then answered honestly. I'm done. And she understood exactly what that meant. Next, I called Mark Rivera, the realtor who had helped me buy the townhouse years before Clara was in the picture. Mark was the rare type of realtor who cared more about people than commissions. He picked up on the second ring. Ethan, what's up? I'm selling the townhouse, I said immediately. He didn't ask why. He'd known me long enough to hear the weight behind my words. I'll print the paperwork, he said. I'll swing by this afternoon. After that, everything fell into place with the unsettling ease of a life being dismantled. I spent the morning moving my paychecks to a private account and adjusting automatic transfers. I left the joint account open with just enough to cover a month of bills. Electricity, water, groceries, Miles' bus pass. After that, they would need to build whatever life they wanted without leaning on me. By noon, I returned to the townhouse, not to negotiate, not to talk, but to collect the last items I cared about. The house was silent when I stepped in. Too silent. For years, that silence had been filled with unspoken resentment, unaddressed conflict, and a kind of emotional neglect that's hard to put into words. But now, the silence felt like a house holding its breath. My note was still on the counter, exactly where I'd left it. I wondered if Clara had read it, if she had cried, if she had gotten angry, if she had torn it in half. But in the end, it didn't matter. The moment I wrote that note, something in my life had reset. I went upstairs, grabbed the last box, just old journals, a few woodworking tools, and the folded American flag from my father's funeral, and headed back down. I was halfway to the door when I heard a car screech into the driveway. Clara. She stormed in like she owned the air in the house. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded, her voice too sharp for the quiet space. "Why is there a for sale sign in the yard?" I didn't look at her, didn't offer explanations she didn't deserve. "It's not our house," I said. "It's mine. Was mine before the marriage, and the prenup spells that out clearly." "You can't just throw us out," she shouted. "You're not being thrown out," I said calmly. "I left enough money to cover a month of bills. After that, you'll need to handle things." Her eyes widened with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You're heartless." "No," I said softly. "I'm just done." She stood there, stunned, like she hadn't believed I was capable of following through. Clara always saw my patience as passivity. She never understood that patience is just discipline with a longer fuse. I stepped past her, walked out the door, and felt the weight of a decade lift off my shoulders. By the time I reached my truck, she was calling someone, her mother, probably, already spinning a version of the story where she was the victim and I was the villain. Let her. People who need a villain will always find one. The next 3 days were a blur of logistics. Mark listed the townhouse and scheduled showings. Isabel finalized the separation paperwork. I moved into the spare room at Cole's, helping him in his garage workshop during the evenings, trying to fill my hands with something other than old habits. Clara's calls shifted from confusion to rage to threats to tearful pleading. I answered none of them. But the message she left on day 4, that one I listened to. "You're ruining everything, Ethan. You think you can just walk away? You owe us. You owe Miles." That's when I finally laughed, a short, humorless sound. If I owed anyone anything, I'd paid that debt tenfold. On day 5, her tone changed again, this time to legal threats. "I've hired a lawyer. You can't sell the house without my consent. I'll sue you for emotional damages." I forwarded the voicemail to Isabel. Her reply came 10 minutes later. "The prenup is ironclad. Let her try." Clara underestimated 2 things: paperwork and the patience of a man who has finally chosen himself. The following morning, I drove downtown to meet one of my major renovation clients, Genevieve Rhodes, a developer known for being meticulous and unshakable. She had left me a voicemail earlier. "We need to talk in person." I knew who had caused that. I walked into her office, and she sat there with a folder on her desk, expression unreadable. "Your wife left a message with my assistant," she said. "She implied you're unstable." I took a breath, then told her everything. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just truthfully. The sentence Clara said, the conversation I overheard, my decision to leave cleanly, the logistics, the paperwork, everything. When I finished, she flipped through the project reports I'd brought. Organized invoices, progress photos, delivery confirmations. "You've worked for me for 5 years, she said. "You've never missed a deadline. You've never given me reason to doubt your integrity." She closed the folder and leaned back. "Deliver the work. The rest is noise." Walking out of her office, I felt my chest loosen, like someone had untied a knot inside me. Clara's attempt to ruin my career had done the opposite. She reminded people why they trusted me. 2 hours later, Mark called. "We got an offer, above asking price." It felt absurdly symbolic, a chapter closing cleaner than it had any right to. That night, Cole and I sat on his porch drinking cheap beers as the sun dipped behind the trees. The air smelled like cedar and early summer. "You look lighter," he said. "I feel lighter." He nodded. "Sometimes people think staying makes you strong. But leaving? That takes a different kind of muscle." I didn't respond, didn't need to. because for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for holding a broken world together. I was responsible only for myself. And that felt like freedom. Freedom is quiet. Not peaceful, not at first, but quiet in a way that makes you realize just how loud your old life was. It had been about a week since the townhouse went under contract when the first real consequence hit Clara. Not the emotional kind, the logistical kind, the kind you can't argue with, manipulate, or cry your way out of. She tried going through my realtor, Mark, first. Bad idea. He called me one evening while I was sanding a piece of cedar in Cole's garage. "So," he said, trying not to laugh, "your wife, soon to be, left me a voicemail claiming you were experiencing a mental episode and that I should halt the sale." I sighed. "Did you respond?" "I sent her the prenup's property clause and reminded her the deed is in your name only." "What did she say?" "Oh, she said some colorful things about you." He chuckled. "But Ethan, she's losing control of the narrative. People like her hate that." He was right. 2 days later, another unexpected call came. This time from Nate Turner, Miles' biological father. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice, rough, weary, and oddly calm, felt like someone I vaguely recognized from old stories Clara used to tell. "Ethan?" he asked. "Yes." "This is Nate. I'm Miles' dad." I almost hung up, not because of him, because of everything he represented. "What do you want?" "Clara called me," he said. "Said you threw her and Miles out. Said you're selling the house out from under them and cutting them off." I exhaled slowly. Of course she did. "And what do you believe?" I asked. Another pause. Then, "I wanted to hear your side. Face to face." There was something in his voice. Not confrontational, not emotional, just tired. A man who had lost too many battles to pick a new one blindly. So we met the next morning at a diner near the highway. He looked older than I expected. Lines etched deep around his eyes, the kind of fatigue you can't sleep away. We sat across from each other in a booth that smelled like coffee and old leather. "Talk," he said. So I did. All of it. The sentence, the laughter, the note, the finances, the truth Clara never wanted anyone to hear. He listened without interrupting once. When I finished, he leaned back and let out a slow, heavy breath. "Yeah," he said quietly, "that sounds like Clara." He wasn't angry, he wasn't surprised. He looked disappointed, not in me, in himself. "I messed up a lot back then," he admitted. "I wasn't there for Miles, that part's on me. But Clara, she always finds a way to turn people into villains." He rubbed his jaw. "I'll talk to Miles," he said. "He deserves to hear the truth, even if he won't like it." I didn't expect much, but I appreciated the effort. 3 days later, he called back. "Well," Nate sighed, "that didn't go well." I closed my eyes. "What happened?" "She told me I was a loser," he said flatly. "Then she said you were worse, that you abandoned them." He let out a humorless laugh. "She's got him convinced the world owes him something." It hurt, not because I expected loyalty, but because I had hoped Miles might see reality without hatred coloring it. Still, I thanked Nate. He didn't owe me anything. But he tried. Meanwhile, the townhouse sale moved forward smoothly. Isabel handled everything. I barely had to lift a finger. But consequences have a long reach, and Clara wasn't done tripping over them. One evening, while Cole and I were working in the garage, my phone buzzed with a message from Mark. It was a screenshot with a caption, "You'll want to see this." Someone had posted in a local community group a warning about a woman attempting to open a store credit account using her boyfriend's information. The name? Clara Jennings. The comments piled up fast. People sharing similar experiences, red flags, failed payments, debt collectors. She had finally run out of places to hide. I expected to feel vindicated. I didn't. I just felt distance, like I was watching a storm destroy a house I no longer lived in. But the next call, that was the one that caught me off guard, a number I didn't recognize. Again. "Ethan?" a man's voice asked. "This is Jordan Pike." "Who?" "I'm seeing Clara." "Ah, the new boyfriend." He exhaled shakily. "I got your number from someone who used to work with you. I hope you don't mind." "I do," I said, "but go on." He hesitated, then the dam broke. "Did she ever borrow money and not pay it back? Or say she'd fix something and then leave it worse? Or—" "Yes," I said. I didn't need the full list. "Oh," he whispered, like he had hoped I'd say no. "Let me guess," I added. "She says it's temporary, that she's rebuilding her life." "Exactly," he breathed. "I already covered rent twice, paid for her car repair, and today, I found a credit card in my name. One I didn't open." I closed my eyes. It was predictable, but painful to hear anyway. "You're not crazy, Jordan," I said quietly. "Just careful. Document everything, freeze your credit, and get out." Silence. Then, "She told me you were cold, controlling, that you ruined her life." "I didn't ruin it," I said. "I just stopped funding it." He let out a long, defeated breath. "That explains a lot." We hung up. 2 weeks later, I found out he had filed a case in small claims court. Clara finally met someone she couldn't manipulate. But the biggest surprise didn't come from Clara. It came from Miles. A message popped up on my phone late one night. The kind of message teenagers send when they're alone, honest and scared. It read, "I saw what Mom did to that guy Jordan. I see things differently now. I thought you were the problem, but you were the only one trying to help. I'm sorry." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote back, "Thank you, Miles. Take care of yourself. Be better than the people who raised you." No anger, no resentment, just truth. And for the first time since leaving, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not hope, but acceptance. 45 days later, the townhouse closed. Clean, legally perfect, irrevocable. Clara and Miles had to move out. I didn't know where they went, didn't need to. Because for the first time in a decade, their lives were no longer my responsibility. And that, more than anything, felt like freedom. People think the end of a marriage is the climax. It's not. The real story is what comes after. In the slow, quiet days when no one is watching to see if you fall apart. About 6 months after I walked out of that townhouse, the divorce became official. No courtroom drama, no teary speeches, no last-minute changes of heart, just a stack of documents, a digital signature, and an email from Isabel that read, "Congratulations, Ethan, it's done." That word, done, sat with me for a long time. Clara had fought for more, of course. More money from joint savings, a share of future business profits, some vague claim for emotional damages that her lawyer knew wouldn't stand. But the prenup did exactly what it was supposed to do. What I had been talked into years ago by a cautious friend and a very thorough attorney. What existed before the marriage remained mine. What we built together was split fairly. What she thought she was entitled to didn't exist in writing. And in the end, in front of a judge who had seen every version of "it's not fair there is," that's all that counted. With my share from the sale of the townhouse and the stability of my renovation business, I did something I hadn't allowed myself to even dream about while I was busy holding a broken house together. I bought a place for me, not for us, not for the family, for me. A small house by a quiet lake, 40 minutes outside the city. 2 bedrooms, a wide porch that faced the water. A detached workshop out back with just enough space for my tools and the projects I'd always said I'd do someday. Someday finally showed up. The first morning I woke up there, the light was different, softer, honest. I made coffee in a kitchen no one had ever yelled in. The floor didn't creak where Miles had stomped down angry. The walls didn't echo with Clara's accusations. The air didn't feel heavy with unsaid things. It was just mine. I sat at the small table by the window, mug in hand, and watched the surface of the lake shift in slow ripples. Ducks cut lazy paths through the water. Somewhere down the shore, a dog barked once and then decided it wasn't worth the effort. For the first time in a long time, my day didn't start with a problem to fix. No missing keys. No unpaid bill someone forgot to mention. No teenager slamming doors because you don't get it. No partner treating me like a nuisance for asking basic questions. Just a lake, a mug of coffee, and a silence that didn't hurt. My days fell into a new rhythm quickly. Morning, I'd walk down to the dock with a fishing rod and not catch anything worth bragging about. It wasn't really about the fish. Midday, I'd handle calls, invoices, site visits. I'd drive into the city, check on projects, talk to crews, walk properties. My business didn't collapse when my marriage did. In fact, without the constant emotional drain, I worked better. Afternoons, I'd be in the workshop, sanding, cutting, measuring, turning rough wood into smooth surfaces and clean lines. There's something honest about objects that either fit or don't. Wood doesn't gaslight you, it just is what it is. Evenings, I'd sit on the porch with a book or just listen to the sounds around the lake. Crickets, distant car engines, the occasional laughter drifting over from a far neighbor's campfire. No one needed anything from me. No one resented me for giving what they asked for. No one called me controlling for caring if they lived or self-destructed. It was simple. Simple felt like a luxury. Every now and then, someone would ask the question people think they're obligated to ask divorcees. Do you miss them? I never answered the way they expected. I didn't miss Clara. I didn't miss Miles. What I missed, if anything, was the idea of a family I'd been trying to build inside 3 people who never wanted to live in it. You can love the idea of something so much you overlook the damage the reality is doing to you. I had done that for 10 years. I wasn't going to do it again. About 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I had to drive back into the city for errands. Hardware store, supply pickup, a quick stop at the bank. Nothing emotional, just tasks. On the way home, I swung by a grocery store I used to go to all the time. The kind of place where the aisles start to feel like muscle memory. Produce on the left, dairy at the back, checkout lines always just a little too long. I was standing in line, one hand on the cart, idly scanning headlines on the magazines I'd never buy, when I felt a flicker of awareness crawl up my spine. You know that feeling, like someone just said your name in a room you can't quite see. I looked up. 3 lanes over, holding a plastic basket with a few basic groceries, bread, milk, eggs, off-brand cereal, was Clara. For a second, time did that strange thing where everything slows down and sharpens at the same time. Her hair was pulled back in a way that made her look tired more than polished. The clothes she wore were plain, practical, not awful, not glamorous, just smaller than the woman who used to treat the mall like a stage. She saw me, our eyes met. A lot of people would expect fireworks in a moment like that, emotions crashing into each other, anger, sadness, longing, regret. There was none of that. There was just recognition. 2 people who'd shared a decade and now shared nothing but a few legal documents and a collection of memories that didn't match. She opened her mouth, like she might say my name. I gave her a small, polite nod, not cold, not cruel, just final. Then I turned back to my lane as the cashier called, "Next, please." No dramatic hallway confrontation. No, how could you? No, we need to talk. The truth was, we didn't. We had talked for 10 years and said almost nothing real. That night, back at the lake house, I sat at my table by the window again. The grocery bag rustled softly on the counter behind me. The sky over the water had gone from blue to deep indigo, smudged with the glow of the distant town. I thought about that last night in the old kitchen, the dripping faucet, the open drawer, the sentence that ended everything. You were never his real father. Stop pretending. She had been right in one narrow, technical sense. I wasn't his biological father. My name wasn't on his birth certificate. No one could force him to see me as a parent, but I had been the one who showed up, the one who stayed, the one who paid attention. That's the thing about being a step anything. You're always on trial, and the judge is someone who doesn't remember all the times you defended them when they weren't in the room. I used to believe that effort guaranteed love. Now I know better. Effort doesn't guarantee love. It just reveals who is capable of seeing it. Clara couldn't. Miles, maybe, eventually could. And me? I could finally see myself clearly. Not as a failure, not as a villain, not as a man who couldn't keep his family together, but as a man who built a life out of what he had and walked away when that life started asking for pieces of him he couldn't afford to lose. Sometimes, on especially still mornings when the lake looks like glass and the whole world feels like it's holding its breath, I catch myself thinking, if I could go back, would I still marry Clara? The answer's complicated. If I say no, I erase the lessons. If I say yes, I sound like I enjoyed the pain. So here's the truth. I wouldn't choose her again. But I would choose the man I became by surviving her. A man who knows his worth, who understands the difference between loyalty and self-sacrifice, who recognizes that love without respect is just dependency with better PR. Some nights, my phone still lights up with unknown numbers. I don't answer. I don't need updates on her life. I don't need to know if Miles ever fully understood. I don't need to replay old scenes in my head, wondering if I could have said something different, done something better, fixed something faster. I did what I could. I did more than anyone asked. And when they made it clear I was nothing more than a stand-in wallet and emotional punching bag, I did the one thing they never thought I would do. I left. Not to punish them, not to prove a point, but to finally choose myself. So when people ask me now, do you ever regret walking away? I look out at the water, listen to the wind moving through the trees, feel the quiet in my chest where chaos used to live, and I say, no, I regret waiting so long to realize I was allowed to. Because in the end, the sentence that was meant to cut me down, you were never his real father. Stop pretending. Became the sentence that set me free. I stopped pretending. And I started living.
This was Ethan's confession. 10 years of holding a family together, undone by one sentence, and rebuilt by the choice to finally walk away. We like to imagine that staying is always noble, that sacrifice is always holy. But sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is admit that you are not obligated to die inside a house just because you helped pay for the walls. What do you think? Was Ethan right to leave quietly and let the consequences find Clara on their own? Or should he have fought harder for the version of family he thought he had? Tell us in the comments. And if you've ever walked away from a life that was slowly erasing you, you're not alone. This is the Confession Stories. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next confession.